Good evening, everyone. Today we'll be looking at a dispute between India and Sri Lanka which has recently resurfaced. Yes, the dispute is that of Katchatheevu Island. Now, it is a very long dispute. It has taken many years. However, the dispute is still between India and Sri Lanka regarding the fact who has the sovereign rights over this particular piece of land. Now, let's try to understand. Katchatheevu Island, it lies off the coast of Rameshwaram, and it is situated at a distance of 14 nautical miles. The island, it originally used to be a part of the zamindari of Raja of Ramnad. Now, once zamindari was abolished, it became a part of Madras Presidency. Three basic things need to be understood regarding the dispute of Katchatheevu Island. Regarding the dispute, the first is there is a sort of disagreement over Katchatheevu Island. Fishing of, rather, we should say that fishing by Indian fishermen in Sri Lankan waters, and additionally, the third and perhaps the most crucial aspect of this dispute lies in the fact that the Indian fishermen, they are using trawlers. So, use of trawlers by Indian fishermen. Now, you might be wondering, one single dispute, it has three underlying facts. Disagreement over Katchatheevu Island, it is indicative of the fact both India and Sri Lanka, they claim sovereign rights over Katchatheevu Island. However, one thing needs to be understood that in an agreement between India and Sri Lanka, which happened in 1974, at that time the Prime Minister of India was Mrs. Indira Gandhi and Sri Lanka's Premier was Sirimavo Bandaranaike. So there was an agreement between the two, and as per the UN clauses and Article 15, which goes on to state that the median line between the two nations, the two contesting nations, it determines the maritime boundary. So accordingly, when the maritime boundary was determined between the two nations, Katchatheevu Island, it was supposed to fall, it fell into the maritime boundary of Sri Lanka, and it was awarded to Sri Lanka. India was provided exemption under another agreement which happened in 1976, wherein the Indian fishermen, they were allowed to rest, dry their nets, as well as they were allowed to visit the shrine of St. Thomas, which is a regular annual feature of this island. And the fishermen of both these countries, Sri Lanka as well as India, the fishermen of both these countries, they visit the shrine. Now, of late, it has again come up and it has become a very hot topic of the general elections which are underway. So let's try to understand how exactly the laws of UN clause work. Let's suppose that this is the terrain of the sea, and so as we all know that as per the UN clause, the territorial sea is divided into the oceans, they are divided into various parts. Okay, first of all, up to 200 nautical miles, a country has sovereign rights over exclusive economic zone, which we generally refer to as EEZ. It is 200 nautical miles, and after these 200 nautical miles, we enter into the high seas. No country has any sort of sovereign rights over the high seas. Prior to the high seas, we need to understand the fact that we enter the zone of continental shelf, that is up to 200-meter sovereign rights over continental shelf. And here in the economic exclusive zone, just at the beginning of continental shelf, UN clause state that a country has sovereign rights over the water column as well as the continental shelf. Right? Right from the beginning up to 12 miles, we have this area is known as territorial sea, and it can also be termed as the sovereign territory. And this particular portion, it is known as territorial sea baseline. Now, so this is the whole setup which has been put forth by the UN clause. So we need to understand that Katchatheevu Island, to a certain extent, it falls under the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka as well as India. People might argue, or rather, you might put forth an argument that So in that manner, India is also equally rightful in claiming sovereignty over Katchatheevu Island. However, we then and there itself, the agreement which happened between Mrs. Gandhi and Sirimavo Bandaranaike, the then premiers of their respective countries, it comes into picture wherein the median line, as per the article 15 of UN clause, it is to decide which portion falls in the maritime jurisdiction of which country. So according to the median line, at that point of time, Katchatheevu Island, it fell in the maritime boundary of Sri Lanka. Hence, India, despite calling Katchatheevu Island as its own portion for a long period of time, had to give up the rights over Katchatheevu Island. Now, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, an eminent parliamentarian, he uh, filed a lawsuit in Jana Krishnamurthy on behalf of, on the urge of Atalji. He filed a lawsuit in Madras High Court at that point of time. But since no credible proofs were presented in front of court, the lawsuit it was rejected. Katchatheevu Island, for a long time, it had been a part of the territory of Indian kingdoms of South. Now, the problem which has arisen, what could be the solution to this problem? Or rather, we should say, way forward. Because one thing needs to be understood. The very third point of dispute, which I have already pointed out, the use of trawlers by Indian fishermen, it has harmed the environment, the sea environment, to a great extent. Here, I would like to bring into picture Sri Lanka was Sri Lanka was facing a sort of civil war like situation for a long time when LTTE was very active in northern portion of Sri Lanka, that is Jaffna, and Sri Lankan fishermen, they were forbidden to fish uh, on the towards the northwestern part of Sri Lanka. So you can say this is Jaffna, and Sri Lankan fishermen, since whole of this area it was blockaded by Lankan Navy. So the fishermen, they couldn't venture on this side for fishing. Only option for them was this much area. Now, once the civil war ended, and with the end of civil war, when the Sri Lankan fishermen, they decided to move out into the waters towards this area, they saw that Indian fishermen, they were employing deep trawling tactics, wherein the trawler, it goes deep inside the sea and it disturbs the seabed as well, thereby harming the sea environment, which also results in the reduction of fish population. As a result, this particular area, you can say, wherein Katchatheevu Island also lies, this particular area, sorry, Katchatheevu Island is somewhere over here. So this particular area, it saw reduction in fish population. It saw reduction in fish population, and the Indian fishermen, they were fishing up to this point. So the question is, can the Indian fishermen be allowed, can Sri Lankan fishermen be allowed to fish into the Indian waters? If not, then the Indian fishermen shouldn't be allowed to fish in the Sri Lankan waters as well. This is just like respecting each other mutually. Now, the question is, if this dispute is there has to be a solution to it. So, the two way forwards which can be suggested is that on certain select days, fishermen of both the countries be allowed to fish in each other's water, and additionally fishermen of both the countries should come together to form a cooperative association, and definitely it will be for the benefit of the fishing community on both the sides. Okay, so let's hope that this dispute gets resolved as soon as possible, because now the fish population has moved towards the portion of this portion, Vaj Bank, and it is situated somewhat off the coast of India, but it lies midway. It again lies uh, a bit midway between both the nations, or rather equidistant on the median line between both the nations. So let's hope that this dispute gets resolved amicably. Thank you.